Today, we're getting into the mind of Miuccia Prada, a true revolutionary who built a global fashion powerhouse not on glamour, but on a system of pure intellectual defiance. We're going to see how she took her own internal conflicts and forged them into an incredible creative machine, a system we're calling the Prada Principle. And what it proves is that the most powerful asset isn't beauty, it's the depth of your ideas. In 1988, facing an industry built on pure glamour, Miuccia Prada launched her first ready-to-wear collection with a design philosophy based on two radical concepts: ugliness and industrial nylon. I mean, to really get how explosive this was, you have to picture the 1980s. This was the decade of over-the-top excess, huge shoulder pads, and just flashy wealth. And right into the middle of that glittering party, Prada drops black, industrial-grade nylon. Yeah, the kind they use for army tents. And she called it the new luxury. This wasn't just a new look. It was literally an intellectual bomb dropped right in the heart of high fashion. So this moment was a full-on confrontation, and it was completely deliberate. On one side, you have the entire fashion establishment of the 80s. Pure glamour, total excess, and just following commercial trends. And on the other side, you've Prada, showing up with the complete opposite: ugliness, utilitarian nylon, and, here's the key, intellect. It was basically a thesis statement. She was making a calculated bet that in a world obsessed with shiny surfaces, people were actually starving for something with a little more substance. All right, so here's how we're going to break down her genius. We just saw the aesthetic confrontation. Next, we're going to dig into the activist's dilemma that really shaped her whole philosophy. Then we'll define the Prada Principle itself, see the system in action through her actual habits, look at the intellectual's legacy, and finally, we'll boil it all down to the power of depth, something we can all learn from. So to really understand why on earth Prada would choose things like ugliness and nylon, we have to rewind. We have to go back to this fundamental conflict that really defined her early years. You see, her design philosophy wasn't born in some pristine fashion studio. It was forged in the fire of political and intellectual struggle. Now, check this out. This is not your typical resume for a fashion icon. Miuccia Prada got a Ph.D. in political science. She was an active member of the Italian Communist Party, a committed feminist. She was totally immersed in Marxist theory, which, is pretty skeptical of luxury goods. And then she inherits her family's high-end leather business. I mean, talk about a head-on collision. This wasn't just a career pivot. It was a clash between her deepest beliefs and her new reality. And that brings us to the million-dollar question she had to answer for herself, right? How can a Marxist idealist sell luxury handbags? How do you possibly reconcile a deep critique of the wealthy establishment with, well, selling them $4,000 purses? I mean, this kind of conflict could have paralyzed anyone, but for her, it actually became the engine for all of her innovation. And her solution was just brilliant. Instead of ditching her ideals, she decided to bake them right into the products. She built this whole systematic reason for her work. The point of Prada wasn't going to be just to make pretty things for people to buy. Nope. The whole purpose was to use the massive platform of a luxury brand to comment on and even critique the very culture it was a part of. So, a Prada handbag wasn't just a handbag anymore. It was a piece of portable social commentary. And just like that, she solved her conflict and gave her brand a purpose that was powerful and rock solid. Now, this brilliant solution wasn't just some vague mission statement. It grew into a formal, repeatable system for creating, a philosophy so consistent that we can actually call it the Prada Principle. Think of it as the operating system that runs everything the brand does, turning intellectual subversion into a concrete day-to-day design process. Okay, let's unpack this principle. It's a systematic belief, meaning it's intentional, it's not an accident. Aesthetics are a vehicle for social commentary. In other words, the clothes are the medium, they're not the final message. And how does she do it? By consistently prioritizing conceptual rigor, irony, and intellectual critique over conventional beauty. In Prada's world, a big idea will always beat a pretty dress. This one principle, right here, is the key to her entire career. So this whole principle stands on three main pillars. First up, the anti-status status. That nylon backpack is the perfect example. She took a cheap industrial material, slapped a luxury price tag on it, and in doing so created a product that basically made fun of status symbols. If you owned one, it meant you were in on the joke. Second, the constant contextual critique. Prada doesn't just design clothes. She presents a full-blown thesis every season. A collection could be a commentary on feminism or anxiety in the digital age or the nature of power. And third, the collaborative filter. Her partnership with her husband, Patrizio Bertelli, is genius. It systematically protects her creative chaos from the demands of business. He builds the commercial fortress so her intellectual lab can run wild without compromise. Okay, a philosophy is one thing, but how do you actually put it into practice day in and day out? A principle is pretty useless if you don't have a system to back it up. So let's look at the actual habits that let Prada keep such a high level of conceptual purity. You know how the fashion industry works, right? It's just frantic. It's built on chasing trends, on immediacy, on reacting to what's next, and just pumping out massive volume. Prada's system is a complete rejection of that. Her pace is all about scrutiny, deliberation, rigor, and this relentless hunt for conceptual purity. She understood something fundamental. You just can't have deep, rigorous ideas if you're moving at lightning speed. So she built a system that deliberately, strategically slows everything down. And this is her secret weapon, the internal self-critique and delay protocol. It starts with an idea, sure, but then that idea gets put through the ringer. It's subjected to relentless internal scrutiny. The designs are debated, they're pulled apart, they're refined in this famously intense process. And here's the craziest part. If an idea doesn't meet her standard for conceptual rigor, she will literally delay it. Think about that. In an industry that lives and dies by seasonal deadlines, this is basically heresy. But it proves that for Prada, the idea is everything. It's more important than the schedule, more important than the market. So if she's not getting ideas from market trends, where are they coming from? Well, that's her second core habit, this incredibly disciplined practice of continuous cultural absorption. She's not looking at what other designers are doing for inspiration. No, she's looking everywhere else. Her fuel is art, film, history, and politics. She systematically soaks up information from all these different fields, which makes sure her work is always grounded in this really deep, sophisticated context. So a color palette might come from some obscure German expressionist film. A silhouette might be inspired by brutalist architecture. It's this multidisciplinary diet that makes her work feel so important. It's not just fashion, it's a synthesis of culture. So what's the long-term payoff for being so committed to this intellectual system? It's not just a successful brand. It's about reshaping an entire industry. Let's take a look at her legacy. I mean, her personal journey is just astounding. Think about it. She went from being this radical academic, an outsider critiquing the system, to a global fashion titan who somehow managed to bake high theory into one of the world's biggest luxury brands. She proved, without a doubt, that your brain is your greatest asset. And when you boil it all down, this is her legacy. She proved that the real purpose of fashion is to communicate and critique, not just to decorate. Before Prada, fashion was mostly a decorative art. After Prada, you just couldn't deny its power as a form of cultural commentary. She elevated the whole game, and in doing so, she gave an entire generation of designers permission to be smart, to be subversive, and to actually have a point of view. And if you look at it in business terms, she completely changed what we even consider a creative asset in luxury. Before her, value was all about traditional glamour, expensive materials, and craftsmanship. She came along and put intellectual rigor and conceptual irony on the balance sheet. She made ideas themselves a commercially valuable product. And that brings us to our final takeaway, because the Prada Principle isn't just about fashion. It's a universal lesson about the incredible power of doing deep conceptual work. So let's distill all of this into something you can actually use. So how can you apply the Prada Principle to your own work? First, prioritize conceptual depth over surface-level simplicity. In a world that loves easy content, commit to making stuff that has layers. Second, adopt your own internal self-critique protocol. Before you put anything out there, put it through the ringer. Is the core idea solid? Third, challenge the conventions in your own field. Figure out what the glamour is in your industry, and then ask yourself, what's my ugly nylon? And finally, have the courage to make your work so conceptually strong that you force the market to adapt to you, not the other way around. As we wrap up, I think it's worth remembering this one thing. Miuccia Prada built an entire empire on the belief that ugliness is merely unexamined truth. It's those things that make us uncomfortable, the things that challenge what we think is beautiful. That's where the most powerful ideas are hiding. Her journey is just this incredible blueprint for how to transform internal, ideological conflict into a repeatable system for shaping aesthetics with pure intellect. And that's how she created decades of work that wasn't just beautiful, but was actually meaningful. And that leaves us with one final powerful rule. In any field,
A pretty surface might get you some attention, but it's the ideas underneath that will give you real, lasting influence. Conceptual depth is the ultimate form of creative power.